Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another lecture by Matthew McKenzie, obviously on unpaid carers. Although at times I will raise awareness and give updates and information on mental health and awareness events. So this one is back on carers, to be honest. Quite a complex one, although the nature of it is actually something that's fairly common. And this is regarding care peer groups. As you can tell by the title, it's a journey into the complex nature of carer peer groups and some of the key focuses. So why do I even call them complex? Because everyone's heard of care peer groups before. I mean, many carer centers, or if you're a carer caring for someone with long-term ill health, I'm sure you must have heard of a peer group. And you might be thinking, oh, Matthew's going to be talking about like, young carers peer groups or diverse minority peer groups or mental health peer groups. Unfortunately, that's not going to really be the case. I'm going to delve even deeper into the format or key focuses of these peer groups and not the ones I've just mentioned, but there are different functions when we come to peer groups. Let me just break this down for you. I'm going to go into the next bit. So basically, what is a care peer group? If you haven't heard of one before, and basically it's a care group, it's just a collection of, I would say, carers, or you could say individuals if you want, because there are the types of peer groups, to be fair. It's not just carers, but what I'll be talking about is ones defined for carers. So a collection of individuals who share common characteristics. So, for instance, a care peer group is the common characteristics is that they're caring for someone. They're caring for a family member or a friend or perhaps a neighbor. Also, what's really important to state about these care peer groups is that they come together for a specific interest, and that's one of the key definitions of these care peer groups that I'm going to be talking about. The other one is experiences of, as I mentioned, caring for someone. Now, within these peer groups, they interact with one another in a way that fosters mutual support, understanding, and personal growth. And I think that keyword there, personal growth, is very important because when we think of peer groups or care peer groups, we often think that you're just sort of giving carers space to let out their feelings or update about their caring situation. But a lot of these care groups, which are not, I don't think they're common, to be honest, but they are important and very much needed. And a lot of them focus on personal growth. A lot of them focus on accountability. It's not just you come and tell your story. There's a lot more to these care peer groups. So I've taken at least more than 3 points of each group because the problem I found when looking into these groups is that there are a lot more to them. So I couldn't, one of the care peer groups had probably 30 points to what it does. So I mean, if I try to describe it here, it'll take all day. So I've just picked out at least the top 4 or 5. Some rules regarding care peer groups, especially the ones I'm going to be talking about, and I think the biggest shame really is they are rare. That's what I found. You're not going to really come across them that much, and it's easy. They're easy to start. As I mentioned, talking. Care talking about the situation and listening. So easy to start, but these groups are very hard to master, except one of them, which might be your bog standard, care peer group. The problem why it's hard to master is that you're actually trying to, well, you need some skills to start the group for sure. That's, in fact, another lecture for another day. But the skills used to develop other carers within that group is extremely difficult. It's not just, you're saying good things or you're encouraging them. There's a lot more to these groups. Now, most care peer groups, and this is me being, I don't know, political, I suppose, most care peer groups seek to avoid carers talking about their loved ones, the ones that I'm going to mention. I've been running care groups for many years now. Unsurprisingly, though, only two of them are in a form of peer groups. The other seven are not, and that's for a very good reason. As I mentioned before, they're very, very hard to run. They're very, very difficult. I'll probably talk a bit more about engagement groups at another lecture, but this one is some of the peer groups I'm going to mention. There are a lot more. I can't mention them all because it would take all day. So I'm just trying to bring up the ones that I'll find most interesting and most important. There are other ones out there, so perhaps I'll revisit this lecture another time for part two. Yes, I mentioned accountability. I think that's the most key skill for carers who are going through difficult situations, difficult emotions. I have done a lecture on how trauma affects carers. Now, going off the back of caring for someone, especially someone with mental ill health, you're gonna, come to the point where you are developing forms of trauma. There are many tools in the caregiving situation. One of them is care peer groups, but it just can't be just the talking and the listening. There's got to be space for accountability, for the carer to be resilient. And that's another key word, resilience, developing resilience in these peer groups. Um, and this is an unfortunate one, to be honest. Most of these groups require experts, and that is a shame. The good thing about it, I would think, is that if you've been caring a long time and you know the ropes and you've picked up quite a few things, picked up quite a few skills, this is what I mean by a form of expert. You don't have to be someone that's a carer, and in other sense, it might be a facilitator, a professional facilitator that is trained to run certain groups. But all these groups can be carer led, but if they're going to go that route, that's when it's going to be quite challenging. Some of them don't require experts, and some of them might be organic. And when I say organic, that means they sort of develop over time without people knowing that they're in a group. So it's just basically talking to one person, then another carer talks to another carer, and before you know it, they're in the cafe having tea, and they're talking about how services are impeding on, the carer's rights, or trying to connect to each other, trying to find a sense of purpose and identity. Most care-led groups are very rare, and it goes back to the situation of veteran carers or former caregivers, because they're the ones that are more likely, if they don't, change their role and go on to something else, they're more likely going to come back and share their knowledge. But care-led groups are quite tricky because obviously carers just don't have the time. And it's not just that. And when I say they don't have the time, they're busy trying to care, they're busy trying to survive, you know what I mean? The other thing is they don't have the resources. Where are these peer groups going to run? They're going to run at a facility. Often they might charge you to run it. The slightly good thing about it is you probably can run you can run care peer groups online anyway. It's not going to be the same sort of environment. It's going to be way different. But there are advantages to online groups. That means it's got a further reach, but it's hard. It's a lot harder to engage, and it's a lot harder to do any resource tools there. As I've mentioned before, all these groups have over 30 to 40 definitions. But as I mentioned, I only chose the top 3 or 4 that I think are quite important and that differentiates between each of these peer groups. A lot of peer groups are not easy to run, as it seems. And I'll keep mentioning this again and again and again. I've been running care groups for many years now, care-led ones, and I struggle. I really do, no matter what skill set I develop. I think the problem I find is that whoever joins a group needs to have a particular skill set, and it's not just terms of reference of the group. That's just a start. I've something I'll probably look into another day. As mentioned, not all care peer groups are the same. but some are hybrid in roles. That what I mean by that is if you come across two care peer groups, different in nature, some of the roles in that when one care peer group can be applied to another care peer group. You can't do it for all of them, but you can have specific chops and changes or specific roles and agendas that can be allocated to another care peer group. And I think the most common one is identity. Building a sense of carer identity is common amongst all those carer peer groups. And as you know, I've probably mentioned this, veteran or former carers are valuable. There is a situation, unfortunately, that people do not value veteran or former carers. Maybe because they say, well, you're not a carer anymore, so there's no sense of you using resources. But used to say that they aren't the resource anymore. They've picked up a lot of knowledge. They now have the time if they wish. And a lot of these peer groups, not all of them, but a lot of them requires leadership. And but I do think this overall, the peer groups, the care peer groups are very, very challenging. No, to not only set up, but to run. They take a lot of work. So let's look at our first one, the most common one, to be honest, the emotional support group. So what does this entail in here? So the emotional peer support of individuals who provide emotional support, basically, empathy, encouragement to each other based on shared experiences that I've mentioned, that they've been caring for someone. But it's not just that. It means that their emotions, and I remember I mentioned trauma, and do look at my other video regarding how trauma affects carers. There's also anxiety, isolation, depression, anger. All these are emotions, and I'm sure many carers are struggling with that. So at some point, whether it's a care center or carers themselves take it upon themselves to say, look, how we going to try and find ways to tackle emotions that are hitting caregivers. Now, the key focus for this type of group, and it is 30, but I've just chosen 3 or 4, is obviously reducing isolation. Because if carers are isolated, then they're prone to emotions getting out of hand, becoming towards more mental ill health, which we don't really want to see. The other one, obviously, a key theme of this care peer support emotional group is building coping skills. Now, remember what I've said at the beginning of this lecture. It's not just about talking about your loved one. That's a big no-no. I mean, you can, but the problem with that is you're focusing on someone else. God forbid, obviously you love them and you want to see the best. But this is accountability. How can we arm the carer to build coping skills? Again, that's another lecture for another day regarding coping skills. In fact, I did a video on it, but I don't think it's clearly defined. How can we build coping skills for carers, unpaid carers who are caring for someone and their emotions are getting out of hand because they're not getting that support? So therefore, carers taking it upon themselves with a bit of training and a bit of luck to find ways of helping to build coping skills. The other one is encouraging self-discovery and growth. How can one enter these emotional support groups, build up their identity as a carer to reduce stigma? That's going to be one of the key themes of a lot of these care peer groups, and grow in that role, not be stagnant at after a year and still struggle with this situation. I'm not saying they're not going to, but it's got to be lessened, if you know what I mean, because they're building the coping skills. Um, I think with such groups, not the accountability isn't so high on this one. Um, the main aim is to bring carers together to reduce the isolation. The one is building a sense of community. A key theme for these emotional care support groups is they come together. These ones actually can be easily carer led because they're trying to bring themselves together. They've met at a carer center, they've met at a hospital workshop or NHS awareness event, and they said, okay, let's meet up. let's try and build a sense of community in regards to this. But after a while, one or two might say, let's try and work ways where we can share how we can develop coping skills. Because each time we're meeting another carer, and although we might refer them to emotional coping skills, or emotional support, there's still got to be ways, an extra way to support each other in a peer format. The last one is hope. I'll put that in caps just to make sure that if there's anything out of this emotional care support group, it's building a sense of hope. Never give up. Um, One thing I've forgotten to do in this lecture is, although these are the focuses, these are the directions of the group, there are things that are not allowed in these groups that I've encountered before, and that I think there's got to be another lecture for another day. I'll probably mention just one or two. The other one is, if you're coming on board with anger, do not take that out on other carers in the group, because it goes against the rules. And as a key theme of peer support, it's not really peer supportive, is it? If you're lashing out at others in the group, because one, that removes this sense of community. It isolates other carers who will probably, strain in their mental health anyway. So that's something that probably can brought up in the terms of reference, and also reminded the the situation is, if carers do these things, they can't be part of that peer group. It's not a peer supportive environment. So that's one. I think I've got 20 to go. So it just goes to show, I know my stuff slightly in regards to care peer groups. I do waffle on, but I'm trying to sort of give ideas. If carers want to try and set something up, you can look at these groups. And I will blog this as well if you don't have much time to go through this video lecture. So the next one's a mutual aid care group. So what does this one entail? So basically, it's a care peer support group, which is a form of mutual aid where people facing similar challenges come together to offer advice, support, and understanding. So it's a bit more, in fact, it's a lot more than what your emotional peer support group is. Basically, that does what it says. The keyword there is emotional support, but this one is mutual aid. So it's basically collective action, shared responsibility, rather than hierarchical or professional intervention. This is carers now coming together and sharing mutual support. So basically, it's almost in a form of lobbying, in a sense, and advocating for social change. They've little policies, and there'll be actually be another group that is even more towards a lobbying group, a really tough one that I will be talking about in this lecture. But this one is, again, the sense of community aspect, but advocating for social change as well. I think this group is slightly difficult because it does require carers to be in the know and to update and report. Obviously, I've mentioned sharing knowledge and resources. So again, it's not your just emotional peer group. It's what can we bring to the table? It is a peer group, no doubt about that, but it's the mutual aid aspect. So share knowledge about the care situation, advocating for social change. It's a shared responsibility. So it's not really any leader, to be honest. I do think some of them might have some, though, in order to drive direction. And providing direct assistance. So a good example is, you can't be everywhere at once. So what happens is, when this group meets, once a month or whatever, each carer in that group has, they've gone to an event, they've, they've gone to a council meeting, or an integrated care board meeting, or an ICS meeting. They've gone to specific events, and they come back and say, this is what we've learned, this is what we've researched. Or another carer comes to that group, says, look, I have a specific problem in my caring duty, what advice can you give? But they're all supporting each other in a peer support way. Each person has a value. There is more to this group, though. I've only picked out what I feel is the top three or four, so I'm not doing this one too much justice. But these groups do exist. They're not, as I said, they're not they're not that common because the problem with this one is it does whoever's in this group, this care group, requires a fair bit of knowledge on what is happening. And I would could say care trends. Obviously, the trend of 2024 is care allowance. A big trend on that one. There are other trends as well. Another one is the mental health act um, being revamped and how that affects the family structure and carers. There are loads of trends out there regarding care. So let's continue on to our third one. So it's a non-hierarchical space on this one. So as it's a shared responsibility. Yes, and I did mention lobbying. So solidarity, really. A big thing about this one really is carers do go under a lot of stigma. And there's a lot of judgment on the family structure, a lot of judgment on someone trying to step up and provide and support something that they don't really know about. So people say, there's a lot of relationship strain on carers, definitely, and people may sort of dismiss the caring role. So basically, they've come together to support each other. So there's lots of solidarity, and the common theme of that, the shared common interest. So the third one, quite a mouthful for this one, non-judgmental safe space for carers group. I did mention in the other group that there's a lot of stigma on unpaid carers, which is a shame. Something I will cover at a later date. The caring role, some people think is lazy. The caring role, some people think is easy. The caring role, some people think you can just easily survive on. And I have mentioned in the past some things I don't understand about the caring role, and I've said silly things. So this one's probably really tough to do because the problem I've had with peer groups in the past is that there are carers that come to this group and straight away they're judging another carer, saying, "Oh well, you're not caring right, are you? If you did this way and did that way, then things would be easier and better for you. Why didn't you learn from it?" Do you see what I mean? I've had quite a few carers snap at me for not sticking to the rules, or I've had to try and get care not to, when they feed back, not to take over the whole meeting. Very difficult, very, very difficult. Here we go. Look, this care peer group actually provides a safe, non-judgmental space for individuals to share their thoughts, feelings, and experiences openly. I think the key thing is encouraging others to um to talk about their experiences and feelings. You can actually come to this group and not say anything, but after a while, you will be encouraged in a non-judgmental way to open up. So this might be a situation where again trauma or not being sure about your role, you've come along to such a group because there's nowhere else to go. And where you went before, they may have judged you. You might have picked up trauma. So let's have a look. Individuals can freely express themselves without fear, criticism, discrimination, or harm. Um, and to note that other groups, patient or service user groups do use these type of things, obviously, because mental illness, that's exactly the simulation or minority groups. But it's not that much different from what carers can also experience because there are criticisms, unfortunately, on the caring role. There's a lot of discrimination. There's something I want to visit later. There's a lot of discrimination. And if you're in a difficult relationship with someone and you're trying to care for them, there can be harm. So it's just a space for carers who experience these things to go in a peer support format. The big thing about this group that differentiates between the other two, not to say that they don't value confidentially that much, but this one has to be strictly confidential because if it's not confidential, there's no privacy, then it's not a safe space to open up. You can't express yourself. So this is very strict. Out of all the other groups, this has got to be the one that focuses on confidentiality at a very high priority. Within these groups, the focus is on providing healing and recovery opportunities. So basically, when you come in this group, you're in a bad way as a carer. So there will be ways to provide carers. How can you heal from the situation where you may have encountered discrimination, criticism, and a whole lot more. I'm not doing it justice. There's a lot more to what carers can go through. They'll be focused on how to recover from these things, and in order to tell your story. There's also promoting inclusivity and respect. Remember what I mentioned before, where carers were sort of ones in the past that I've noticed were lashing out at other carers or saying, "Oh, well, you're not caring right," or "You can't be carer because I suffer more than you." Do you see what I mean? And this is very common, unfortunately. I go online to different care organizations, and every time I will see a carer literally lashing out at other carers or lashing out at other organizations as if they don't understand the focus of carer peer support. This is a very big problem, a very, very big problem as of 2024. And I suspect it will continue until such groups as these can help destigmatize the caring role. Not an easy group to run, very difficult. So let's move on to the next one. This is again another mouthful. So it's a community of shared struggles groups. So basically, this one, a care peer group, basically is a community of people who face similar life challenges, offering one another insight and companionship. So what does this focus on? Why is this different from the other groups? Let's have a look. Well, the key theme here is reducing stigma, something that's going to be appearing time and time again. But this is not the only theme of this group, where it's reducing stigma and isolation. It's also nurturing compassionate connections, and this time is empathy. Again, very difficult. You can't easily train someone to be empathetic, and it takes a lot of time. Even if you are a carer, how can you be empathetic to other carers? And in the past, I've not seen this easily. It's very rare, but it can be done. If someone sets up such a group, it's basically a community of shared struggles group. Every carer I know struggles in some form. All right, some might struggle more than others. Some have actually tragic stories, and some perhaps not, but they all struggle. On this one, this is quite interesting. Something I always try and promote through my poetry, providing a platform for. In fact, I'm actually writing a book regarding telling your story as a carer. But this one is providing a platform for storytelling and healing. Another thing that's mentioned, healing. We also have facilitated shared learning and coping strategies, and there are hundreds of them, specifically designed for unpaid carers, which again I will delve into in quite a few lectures regarding why coping strategies are important and how unpaid carers can use them. You might find one or two videos, maybe free, in my channel, my YouTube channel. So do go through them. They're not in depth, and something I will visit regarding coping strategies for unpaid carers. This one I like because I've always focused on the importance of empowerment within a care peer environment. So this one's called a care empowerment group. So, okay, what's so special about this? And why is it different from the other care peer groups that I've mentioned? So look, these care peer groups support groups empower individuals by fostering a sense of belonging and control over their challenges. So it's not the focus too much on emotion. In fact, not much of it at all. Not about the sharing of resources. There's a lot of skills developments, I would think, on this one. The key theme here is promoting resilience and overcoming obstacles that carers might find themselves coming across. Building that resilience before you're being broken down by your caring role. Building, this time, the keyword here is strong social networks and connections online. This is something I do, and offline, on site, maybe at your local care center, maybe at a hospital, oddly enough. But the key themes this group's got to build these strong social networks and connections. This is really difficult, to be honest, but it's one of the key directions of this group, that this is their challenging the social and cultural norms, people's views on unpaid carers, and there are a lot of them, but this is one of the key focuses of this care empowerment group. And offering tools and resources for skill development regarding care empowerment. So this one's difficult. I mean, no, not difficult. I mean, slightly. What I meant to say is different from empowerment. This is more encouragement. So this is the Care Encouragement Network. Now, these groups serve as networks of encouragement where members motivate each other towards goals or, that go through difficult times. So I've not write this one correctly, but the key theme here, and this is quite common actually amongst all groups, but this one is specific for this care encouragement network, and it's building confidence and self-belief. There are situations where people feel they're not carers anymore because of the situation has changed, but that can, another carer will see this and say, hang on, no, no, you are a carer, you've cared for someone perhaps, or perhaps the situation, the relationship's broken down, but you still care. I see that you're, still worrying about them. You see what I mean? They're trying to build up confidence. The caring role might have sort of finished, the loved one might have passed on, giving them that self-belief to continue on with finding new skills, encourage them as a person. Um, Again, there's that keyword again, building that resilience but it's through encouragement. You can actually build resilience through a lecture, but this one's encouragement. You're very difficult to do. It's the same thing as trying to instill a sense of empathy. I don't think these things can easily be trained. And again, I keep coming to groups where carers are lashing out at each other and saying, no, 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 I suffer more than you, and oh, you don't understand this, you're stupid. And I see this often. It's a sad fact. It really is. Um, so that's why these types of groups are really important, but it requires some form of leadership, a lot of skill development. So it's building that resilience through encouragement, not just talking to someone. There are ways to do this. This one is now the focus of this one. This is the first one, role models. So building, facilitating peer mentorship. So you're training someone to be a peer mentorship to other groups, but also these, they can have them as role models. Like other kids look to them as a way of being encouraged to cope with the caring role, to cope with the experiences, the tough experiences of being an unpaid carer. Remember, every key theme of these groups is peer support. And there it goes. The first thing, accountability. The carers who come to this group are accountable with compassion. Members must be accountable to their goals. They can't sort of just come, listen, and disappear. They've got to build that resilience. They've got to build that confidence. They must be accountable. There's got to be some form of change, but they're not forced into it. But that's something you need to take note of if you do end up at a care encouragement network. This is very common, the self-help care peer group. Not easy though. As you can tell, self-help is not something carers can do that easily. So basically, it's a care peer support group where individuals or carers work collaboratively to manage or overcome shared issues without professional intervention. So self-help is basically, it's not a central role, but I don't believe that fully. I think there'll always be someone trying to drive it. So again, the key thing is providing that peer support and solidarity, what brings carers together, reducing that stigma, reducing that shame. There's a lot of shame, unfortunately, put on the carer role. Something I'll cover another date. This one focuses on building long-term support networks. It's not like you come for like a couple of months and disappear. The idea is that whoever's running these groups will make it clear that this is for the long haul. That these networks must be developed. In fact, I actually have one of these things online. The WhatsApp groups existed for many years. It's not just WhatsApp groups. There's obviously more to it than that. These can be organic, but you're trying to instill a sense of self-help because you can't always be there for someone. There's a saying, you give a man a fish, you feed him once. You give him the fishing rod, he'll feed himself forever. So this is one of the key focuses regarding self-help care peer group. And promoting again the sense of belonging, promoting a sense of community, what brings these carers together. Now, this one's tricky. If you come to these types of groups, you're in a bad way. You really are. You're at your wit's end. So this is an alternative therapy care group taken actually from a patient. a mental health patient alternative therapy group. The big reason why it's that way is medication can be so destructive and the side effects. So that's why patients and service users, if they can, if they're able, it's not as easy for them either. In fact, it's even harder to develop alternative therapy groups. But carers may find themselves in a situation where they actually develop mental ill health and now are at risk on taking medication that become highly addictive with difficult side effects. So now this care peer group uses non-professional voluntary alternatives to therapy where people find support through shared experiences rather than clinical guidance. As mentioned, jump the gun, there are quite a few patient groups following such a model. So these ones actually use various methods such as coaching. Now this is very difficult to do, absolutely tough. Shared experience is obviously easier, but the coaching is a tough one. Or creative expression instead of conventional psychotherapy. Um, Obviously, it's your art. That actually come into another group later on during this lecture. So sort of art therapy, poetry, creative writing, are forms of expression that is can't be easily done when you're traumatized. You can't say much because you're worried someone's going to lash out at you. Oh, yep. So, John, art therapy, mindfulness practices, storytelling, or peer coach. I think that's very difficult, peer coaching, but it is something that's this group focuses on. Also, one of the key themes of this type of group is the enhancing communication and interpersonal skills. So, accountability, there's that word again, the care accountability circle. What does this type of peer group do? Well, this care peer groups support group, which is an accountability circle, which helps individuals stay motivated, but also responsible in pursuing goals or managing challenges. So, what does this group? What does it focuses on? So carer members hold each other accountable for achieving their personal, professional, or developmental goals. They're offering consistent check-ins and progress reviews. And that one is, again, obviously it's peer support, but it can be tricky to do because not many carers have the time, and a lot of carers may be needy. I think this is something that probably develops over time, but it is one of the rules of this circle. Um, and it's obviously how it's up to the circle how it's done, but there must be check-ins and progress reviews. Otherwise, how can you be accountable? Ways of increasing motivation and focus so not to be sidetracked. Good example is, obviously not to focus so much on your loved one, it's on yourself, and encouraging accountability beyond that group. So obviously the group's not going to be always running 24 hours. How can a carer who's attended that group be accountable for the challenges they face beyond the group? And if the group finishes or ends, the accountability should still be there. Right, this one might seem easy, it isn't. But here, what we have is a listening and validation space for carers groups. So these groups are spaces where individuals can feel heard, validated, and respected without fear of criticism. But why is this one different from the others that I've mentioned? The core focus is on deep listening, empathy, and emotional support rather than problem solving or advice giving. I think these things are very hard to do for carers, and you might need someone who's deeply skilled, has empathy, has developed it, but also can train it. So that's what I'm trying to say. These groups, not easy, but they are there if you're skilled enough to run them. The key theme also is reducing isolation and loneliness. So it's a chance to, let's say, carers who come here don't have too much of a problem on being heard, but they have a lot to say, and those in that group have to be fairly skilled in listening and providing that emotional support. The thing though is giving them those coping skills that they have them, but it needs to be strengthened. Encouraging self-compassion. Carers, when you lash out, unless they can lash out at themselves, trust me. So self-compassion, time for unpaid carers to support and self-heal themselves. I think this is going to be the most difficult one. Resource sharing carer group. So this one is, oh, it's a peer support group, obviously, but facilitates the sharing of resources such as tips, tools, services relevant to the members' needs. Care members come together to exchange information, skills, tools, materials, or other support in order to address common needs or goals. So, what can you bring to the table if you're coming to such a group? You don't really have to be put under pressure to do that, but the idea is you can't be everywhere at once as a carer. This was mentioned in another group I mentioned, but this one is resource sharing, maximizing the use of resources and skills actually. So carers can help them, maybe helping to dig a garden of another carer, but it doesn't have to be always on the situation of care policies or care events. Providing emotional and practical support is a peer group after all, facilitating collective problem solving, but not to the point where it overrides the focus on resource sharing. And this is the most important one regarding such a group. It's got to create a culture of giving and gratitude. So a big problem again, I'm sorry I have to keep bringing this up. There are situations where carers might turn up to a group, talk, group is only about an hour long, and the carer will talk for half an hour, half an hour about their own situations and not really care who else is there. So this one is, creating a culture of giving and gratitude. You have to be feeling knowledgeable in regards to such a group because we want to encourage sharing resources. And when you share resources, being thankful for it. Right, skill building, care and community. So with this one, some care peer groups support groups that focus on building skills and coping mechanisms to navigate shared challenges efficiently. So this one is a supportive environment for individuals to develop, enhance various personal, professional, technical skills. Keyword here is technical skills regards to building a network of like-minded individuals, fostering creativity and innovation. So it's all about it's all about skills, developing these skills. And a lot of them, there's a huge amount of them regarding the caring journey, the caring experience, and creating a diverse learning community. So highly technical, highly skilled. Can be actually be easy to set if you have the resources, but you've got to keep these skills relevant. And I think it's highly leadership driven. It's more like almost a research group, but providing skills, not too much focus on the emotional, but a lot of peer support in it. But it's basically what skills can we use to tackle specific issues in regards to coping mechanisms, navigating the carer's journey. This one is the care recovery community. And here, what we have is this care peer support group provides a community for recovery from, there's that keyword again, trauma, but also from addiction and mental health issues, focused on shared progress and milestone taken actually again from a patient, a service user group on specific uh, situations that are a challenge for mental health. Carers, unfortunately, as like anyone else, can be prone to mental health, to complex family structures. So a group of carers who come together to support each other in the process of recovering from mental health challenges, that keyword again, trauma, depression, anxiety, stigma from society, providing a sense of belonging and connection, empowering individuals to take control of their recovery, providing a structure recovery framework. I've encountered a lot of carers, unfortunately, that have developed, unfortunately, mental ill health. Problem solving care group. So why is this one here? Now, this one is a group that helps members brainstorm solutions to common problems, like drawing from shared experiences again and lessons learned. So finding effective solutions through collective input, support, and shared experiences. Almost a lobby group, actually. So, talking about the laws and policies to hold into account with care of confidence, but also What are the common themes that affect carers overall? Encouraging critical thinking. They're very tricky, but it is important such a carer group exists. But it's a peer group after all, so it will be offering emotional and motivational support. There's no point in problem solving if they can't be tested in a low risk environment. So again, a lot of the focus might be on carers struggling with emotional or other challenges. This is very challenging to set up, and it's not always peer support, but in a way it is. It is a peer support group, but it's a very difficult one to set up, and you do need a lot of skill sets to do this one. This one's one of my favorites, resilience building care and network. So what happens now? These groups aim to help individuals build resilience, a sense of optimism through the solidarity of shared struggle. It focuses on helping carers strengthen their, again, emotional, mental and physical resilience in the face of challenges, stress, or adversity. Again, developing self-awareness and reflection, developing a sense of empowerment and control, building emotional agility. If I go back a bit, actually, a lot of these things have been mentioned before, especially the resilience is one of the key themes of this network, caring network. It's about developing and building this and helping you cope in that caring role before things hit you, before you end up using emotional care peer support group. They don't want carers to go down that road. But again, these groups are rare to almost impossible to find, but they are important. So okay, empathy driven care group. What's this one do? So this one is a care group is based on empathy. Again, I think that's very difficult, where members often, offer understanding and comfort to those experiencing similar life situations. But how can this be done? Again, I can only mention three or four of the types in regards to this group. So focus on fostering deep understanding, compassion, and mutual respect. Again, I do think most of my time in the carer group circles, I still think it's very difficult. I suppose the judge is still out and the jury's still out on this one. It's very difficult. I find a lot of carers lash out at each other. Fostering active listening and deep understanding. Developing empathetic communication skills. This one, very interesting. I would like to revisit this one at some point in time. And strengthening conflict resolution. You know why this is there? This is there. Why I've put this on there is because obviously you're caring for someone that's again mental ill health. Then how can you manage that caring role when there is a risk of conflict or it's happened? So conflict resolution skills. Very hard to set up and run, and it's a shame, but it's a group that's certainly needed. The care social connection platform, again, is a bit of a mouthful. What did this type of care peer group? This type of care peer group is a platform where carers combat isolation by connecting socially with others who understand their unique challenges. So meaningful social interaction, fostering a sense of belonging and provide opportunities for members to connect. Encouraging a positive social engagement, building lasting friendships, promoting shared interests in that. So actually, this is probably one of the most easiest groups to set up. Don't get me wrong, there's still some skill sets to do this, but these are the most ones that are organic because carers try to do this, not all the time. But some of the key themes here don't require too much of a skill set. Obviously, carers can build lasting friendships. They have those shared interests. They might struggle in regards to activities, but the opportunity is there. So this perhaps is one of the most easiest ones to set up and run and create a sense of belonging. So that one is probably the most common ones that's out there as a care peer support group. Now this one, I don't think it's so easy. The non-professional carer support network, or why? What does this one do? This one's the type of care peer support group that creates an informal network that provides support for lived experience rather than through a clinical professional expertise. So slightly different than the alternative therapy group. Why? Because the emphasis is on mutual aid, shared understanding, and lived experience rather than expertise or qualifications. And you can see the difficulty in this is that if you're trying to go this route, in terms of qualifications, there might be tricky situations, but the focus is what brings us together. When the problem with qualifications is it brings a sense of a bit of bias, is that you feel like you're trained, but you don't have that lived experience. Those in this carer network have it. They've developed it. So that's what brings them together. And from here, hands have put lived experience. How can they help each other continue? So it's offering practice through lived experience, offering practical, peer-driven advice. So none of these perceived ideas that can get in the way when you feel you have the qualification or the expertise. So it's also creating an accessible support system, free support, but then who has the time? So it can be difficult. And it's all non-hierarchical again. It's as found this picture, they're all in a circle. So it's non-hierarchical. They're all bringing something to the table, trying to learn. It's through that shared experience. Another problem I do find in peer groups is that sometimes there is a bit of that hierarchy, as I know best, and you do as I bloody well tell you to do. But anyway, let's go into this one, the trust-based care community. I think again it's very difficult. One of the most difficult ones actually. Trust-based care community group, a peer support group that is trust-based community where carers feel safe to be vulnerable, not easy, and authentic, slightly easy about their experiences. It creates a safe space and secure environment where individuals can share their experiences, offer support, collaborate without fear or judgment, or this is a new one, betrayal. So building and maintaining trust among members, I think that's immensely difficult, to be honest. Creating long-term relationships built on trust, creating a culture of consistent support. So not the most common care group out there. Again, certainly needed by the word trust, because unfortunately the key thing this is trying to battle against is isolation. I've probably not mentioned it here. If you're isolated, you trust no one. So if you come across such a peer group, it's worth doing. It's just not that easy to run. You've got quite a big skill set. And strengthening the group's sense of purpose. I think we're almost halfway, I think. So group growth-orientated carer group. So here, this encourages personal growth, learning, and healing through shared journey of members who face similar life experiences. That's fairly common in some sense, but why is this one slightly different? So here they pursue their goals, enhancing their skills and fostering both individual and group growth. It's not just the individuals this time, it's the group as a whole. Encouraging personal development and self-improvement. Creating a supportive environment. And this is a new one for taking risks. A big key theme on this really is carers can lack the confidence to take on challenges. A good example is holding into account decisions made on carers themselves or their loved one. So this might be part of this growth-orientated care group. Not the only one, there are other things as well. Providing a safe space for failure and learning. So another thing is people can be judgmental of the caring journey. Carers mess things up, not their fault. I've been told time and time again, you don't understand this because you're not been through that, or good one is mental illness. Fair enough, I don't know it. It's just happened. I've still had to try the best I can, and I will mess things up. But if there's a peer group, and hopefully that care lashes out, then it's a safe space for failure and learning. You're not going to be told that you don't belong here. And creating opportunities for leadership development. So this is an interesting one. I actually have a group that I tend to practice this on, because I will say to others, do you want to try and run the group for the day? I think only one or two has done this. This is the one that I have over in Southwest London. So the opportunities for leadership development, and also it's not just running the group, but actually it's what you do outside the group as well that brings you that growth in taking on challenges regarding your carer's journey. So it's not just about running the group. There are other things as well, something I will revisit. So we're on halfway, but we've managed to get to the last bit. The conclusion, which I'm afraid is going to be a little bit, I'm still a bit downhearted regarding these groups. There are several key themes in all care peer groups, such as developing coping skills, building resilience, skill sharing, and dealing with care stigma, and a lot more than that. Such types of care peer groups are vast and complex. Some are very challenging to set up. Such care peer groups are rare, but due to millions of carers, they are certainly required. Any care actually can start a care peer group, but running can be challenging, but definitely worth the effort. You still, if the group fails, you've learned a lot anyway. And I think I'll end it there. If you like this lecture, I know I did it overly long, but it's a very complex uh, and in-depth lecture because the nature of these groups are complex. It's not, again, what I've always mentioned. The care turns up, spills the guts by talking, has a bit of tea and sandwich and cake, whatever, then walks off. These groups are specific for specific reasons. If well defined, can really help carers. But unfortunately, from my experience, a lot of groups tend to lend themselves to that sort of thing because it takes a lot of time and effort, resources to develop such groups, but they're certainly needed. I will revisit um, some groups in more detail, but I'd like to say thanks for dropping by. Give me a like for this video and do subscribe. See you again soon.